many times we don't finish it because we feel like we got to do everything at once. Oh, I just need a whole day. I need a whole weekend to finish this thing. And you are not finna have no whole weekend to yourself in this season. Okay. But guess what? You might have 30 minutes before bedtime. You might have an extra hour in the morning. So work with what you have and know that God can do so much with a little bit. Hello, beloved. My name is Christina Patterson, and I am passionate about helping Christian creatives and entrepreneurs create an influence that makes an impact. When I left my job at the U.S. Department of State as a grants manager to stay home with my first child, I started a small blog called Beloved Women to share one simple message. You are loved. Now, Beloved reaches millions of women worldwide with that life-changing message, and I've learned just as many lessons along the way about business, branding, and communicating in a faith-focused space that I cannot wait to share with you. If you are ready to master, market, and monetize your message, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Beloved Studio podcast. This podcast is my opportunity to share with you my behind the scenes of being a Christian YouTuber, communicator, and entrepreneur to help you grow your gifts, pursue your purpose, and take territory for the kingdom. If you are a Christian creative like me and you're an entrepreneur, communicator, whatever you might be, whatever gifts the Lord has given you, one thing that He gives us with that is inspiration. And we'll be inspired with all these ideas and good things and projects that we want to work on. And last episode, we talked about trusting God to get started even when we're not ready. And there's a lot of excitement around that, but there's a lot of hesitation around that as well. And last episode, we talked about overcoming that hesitation. And I made a case for starting even when you're not ready. So if you didn't have a chance to listen to that episode, be sure to check it out when you get the chance. But today, I want to talk about finishing what you start. Because many times we can actually get over our hesitation of starting something because there's an excitement that comes with it as well. We're excited about the new idea, what promises it potentially holds, the product we want to create, the book we want to write, whatever it is. Even more challenges come, however, in the middle of the process. When that excitement starts to kind of wane a little bit and we're in a situation where we got to write or we got to record or we got to create or we got to respond to this email and we don't feel like it. And so it can become easy to become complacent or distracted and not finish what we start. So in this episode, I want to give you some pointers on how to finish what you start, how to actually finish and complete and see those dreams come to fruition that God has placed on your heart. So the first challenge that you might encounter when it comes to finishing what you start is deciding, well, what thing do I need to finish? Because if you're a starter and you're not finishing things, which I do a lot of times, I'm going to be honest with you, is that you'll have half a book written or you'll have a half of a YouTube script written or you'll have all these projects that are like half done. I was looking through my notes and I realized that I had almost a whole Bible study completely written and I just didn't finish like the editing process and all the like post writing things to actually get this Bible study out. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I looked and I had a book that was like outlined and like also half written. And I was like, I have all these projects that are almost done or half done. And I really want to finish these projects because I feel like God gave them to me for a reason. And so I'm not here to like judge myself or you or anything else because I'm a mom. I get it. I understand that sometimes it's not that you're distracted or you're just scatterbrained all over the place. It's just that you got a lot going on and you have priorities sometimes, many times, that trump projects that you might be working on. So I think that it's good to keep track of your projects and know which ones you have unfinished. But when the time comes for you to actually finish a project, you got to know which project is it that I want to really invest in and finish. And so my advice to you is don't try to do them all at once, because if you try to do all of them, you'll end up doing none of them. So the question that you want to ask yourself is, what is the last thing that God called you to do? And these are just questions that you can kind of ask to determine which project you want to work on to finish next. So what is the last thing that God called you to do? You definitely want to pray to God, okay, what's the priority here? But also ask yourself the question, what's the project that you're working on that is the closest to completion. Okay. You want to give yourself some low hanging fruit. If you have a book that's like 90% done and you have another book that's like 10% done, start on the book that's 90% done, that you're almost finished doing, unless the Lord really leads you to just completely do something else, which he can do that sometimes, because he's good for like switching things up just to keep us on our toes, right? But if that's not the case and you're just in a season of finishing things, work on what you're the closest to finishing first, and then work backwards from there. But ask yourself, what's the last thing that God called you to do, and also work on that. If they're the same, then great. If not, I would choose what's the thing that I'm the closest to completing. And so for me, it was that Bible study. It's actually called Crazy or Called. It'll be coming out soon, prayerfully. We're wrapping it up. And I started writing this Bible study years ago. And I looked at it and I was like, oh my goodness, this is like 80% done. And it's just been sitting here on my phone in my Google Docs. Actually, it was in Evernote. I was using, that's how long ago it was. I used Evernote a long time ago to organize all my notes, and it was in Evernote. And so I put it in Google Docs and realized how close to finish I was with it. And I was like, I need to go ahead and finish this. And the thing is we'll sometimes lose our motivation or our inspiration and that excitement. And that's why we stop working on things to chase the next inspiring thing. And so if you really want to finish what you start, my advice to you is not to always follow what you're motivated to do, but what you're disciplined to do. Discipline finishes more projects than motivation. Motivation will get you started. Inspiration will get you started, but discipline is what is going to help you to finish. So what I did to ensure that I was going to finish this project, and this is what I do for most of my writing projects, is that I dedicate a special amount of time to work on that project every day for a certain amount of days out the week, and I stick to it. So for me, between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. every Monday through Thursday, that is a writing time for me. Non-negotiable. I don't record videos then. I don't take interviews. I don't conduct interviews. I don't plan meetings then. I am writing during that time. Now, of course, like I said, priorities come up. I might have a doctor's appointment. Certain things come up and I'll move things around. But for the most part, in my mind, I try to stay as disciplined as possible to keep that space for writing and finishing that project so that I have the time and the space to actually finish it. So that's the thing that you have to think about when it comes to finishing the project. You know which projects you want to work on next to complete. It's creating a system of discipline now to actually complete it. What does that look like for you? What time can you set aside to work on that project? Now, many times we don't finish it because we feel like we got to do everything at once. Oh, I just need a whole day. I need a whole weekend to finish this thing. And you are not finna have no whole weekend to yourself in this season. Okay. But guess what? You might have 30 minutes before bedtime. You might have an extra hour in the morning. So work with what you have and know that God can do so much with a little bit. And you will be amazed at just how much you'll actually get done. You'll be like, oh, I didn't need a whole week away on some writing retreat. Like some people do that. They have the luxury of taking writing retreats for a whole week and staying up in a hotel to get their projects finished. I don't have that luxury yet, y'all. I'm lucky that I got 9 to 11. Honestly, I thank God for it. And before that, when my kids were home, I had from maybe 6 to 7 in the morning and then maybe from 9 to 11 at night. Like I'm working in the fringes, but figure out a time that is not overwhelming and causing anxiety. And I'm not saying lose sleep over it, but what little bit can you do? What little step can you take to finishing this project consistently? Because sometimes we feel like we need this whole block of time and you really don't. You might just need 10 minutes a day to get it done. It doesn't take as much as you think it does, but it takes more discipline than you think it does. And so again, discipline finishes projects more than motivation finishes projects. Motivation starts a project, but it's discipline that's going to help you finish. And so my final advice to you when it comes to finishing what you start is to record any inspiration that you have. Now, inspiration and motivation is not bad. It's really good to be excited about something new that God's placed on your heart. But if you're working on one thing and you get motivation and inspiration for another thing, just write it down. Keep it in your notes for a later time, but don't go on a rabbit hole of trying to complete a whole new project if you really don't feel like God's necessarily calling you to do that. Write it down. Crystal Evans Hurst actually posted a really moving video at the end of last year called Write It Down. And she was just talking about how she wrote something down that really ministered to her sometime later, and how we'll forget. God will give us something and we'll write it down. I know I do this, and I'll write it down and I'll forget, and I'll come back to it 2 years later and be like, oh my gosh, I needed that today. Oh, I need to make this into a video, because we forget. And in that time, we're excited about it, but then we go about our normal life. So there is a beauty and a gift in writing down the ideas and dreams and inspiration that God gives you on any given day, so that you can keep it. Also, so that you don't have to feel like, oh, I have to do it right now or it won't get done. No, write it down. You'll remember it. Finish whatever else you need to do. Keep your priorities, your family and your husband and all the things. And God will bring it back to your remembrance because you wrote it down, so that you can finish it when the time comes. So I hope that today's podcast was an encouragement to you to finish what you start. Let me know in the comments what project you are inspired to finish for the glory of God. Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and please leave a review, as it really helps us to grow this movement. Thanks so much for listening. And until next time, be beautiful, be blessed, and be loved.